Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Jesus with another PPT for publicnotes.org. And in this tutorial, we'll open with a brief recap of the proem, a word on the graces, and a note on translation. Then we'll jump into our discussion of the first four gods, otherwise known as the Primordial Gods. If you caught the previous presentation on the Muses, then you know their mother is a goddess named Mnemosyne, and their father is none other than the lightning-launching Zeus. Their birthplace, the small town of Pieria, located near the mountain of Olympus, on which we are told they live in lavish mansions. To one side lives a neighbor named Desire, and to the other live a group of ladies called the Graces, aka the Charites.
Check this out.
Now, I didn't say this last time, but their mother is a goddess named Euphrosyne, and their father is one womanizing Zeus, which makes the Graces half-sisters to the Muses. Euphrosyne is a type of goddess known as an Oceanid, which means she's from the ocean. But the use of the word from is not so much the same as when we say someone is from California or from New York City. Rather, what Hesiod is telling us is that Euphrosyne is from her father's ballsack, and her father's name just happens to be Ocean. Another way to say this without sounding so vulgar and brusque, and quite frankly more appropriate, is with the word begotten, so that we may say Euphrosyne is the begotten daughter of Ocean. She is the third wife of Zeus.
Oh yeah.
Let's go.
Oh my god.
Break it.
Whereas Mnemosyne was the fifth. One was a Titan, the other an Oceanid.
Bing, bang, boom.
Collectively, the Graces are three goddesses, the youngest of whom is Aglaea. Her name means splendor, and she later becomes married to a god named Hephaestus. Her two sisters are Euphrosyne, which means joy, and Thalia, which in this particular instance we translate into cheerful. Now, if you caught the previous presentation on the proem, then you know that there's a muse by the same name, except we said in her case it meant generous. That's because Thalia is a word that Greeks would use to help describe their dinner parties, banquets, cookouts, you name it. It's an adjective that can have a slightly different meaning yet still holds the same operating idea. Just keep in mind, Thalia the Grace and Thalia the Muse are two different goddesses. That pretty much concludes our side note on the Graces. Read it, write it, say it, quick repeat it. Now, if you recall, we last left off with Hesiod feeding his sheep near the bottom of Mount Helicon when the Muses suddenly appear before him, tear a branch of laurel from a tree, and hand it to him. Now he's asking them to reveal the Theogony, or in other words, the birth order of the gods. And the Muses answer,
First among the gods was Xaos, hat to the Omicron Sigma.
Yeah.
Then came Gaia, Tartaros, and Eros.
Right about now, you're probably asking, what the heck is this dweeb saying? Well, let's take a little trip down memory lane. Many years ago, the Romans began interpreting the Greek text. And when they came across the Greek word house, they said, that must mean chaos. And they assigned to it the definition we apply to it today. The ancient Greeks, however, intended for it to mean a void, a gap, or as in the translation we'll be using, a chasm. Now, what exactly is this chasm, you might ask? Well, we know it's some sort of empty space or a special nothingness from which the universe began.
Nailed it.
A philosopher named Aristotle wrote a book he called The Physics, in which he explains that in order for something to exist, there must first be room for it to exist. And according to Aristotle, Hesiod is simply saying, before anything existed, first there had to be a special space for its existence. And what was Chasm a special space for? Well, for a goddess known as Gaia, and her name means earth. We are told she's the unshakable seat of all the gods. And what this means is not that she's literally the seat as in like a chair for all the gods to fart on, although life will make it seem this way sometimes. Rather, what it means is earth is the foundation on which the gods all rest. And because there is practically a god for everything, we can say earth is the foundation of all things.
Yeehaw!
After Gaia came an evil, wicked god whose name is Tartaros. He lived within the murky depths of earth in a dark and dank and stanky, gloomy place, where no sun ever shines, where every source of evil lives, and where the very limits of the world all are. From the surface of the earth, a block of bronze would fall for 9 whole days, and on the 10th, simply enter into Tartarus, only to continue falling for a year before it reached the bottom of this dank and murky abyss, where once on stable ground, blast after blast after blast would toss anyone inside around like ragdolls. A nasty and distressing place, so unbearable the gods themselves all hate, and its only purpose is to punish and to torture and to keep the things they hate from ever surfacing to light. It later turns into a prison for some bad mother truckers. Now you might say, wait a minute, back the fun up. How can Tartarus be both within the depths of Earth and also have a distance of 10 days away from it? Well, it's important here to note that even though Hesiod tells us Tartarus is in the booty pit of Earth, we should keep in mind he is introducing him as one of the primordial gods, all of whom are separate entities.
Yes.
Tartarus is represented as an actual place, but it's also represented as a creature with a personality of its own. Imagine you live in a really big house with a 3-story basement. The first floor is dark and stanky, spooky, scary, but the second floor more so. And the third floor, at the very bottom, is the darkest room of all, and it creeps you the fridge out. That's what we'll call Tartarus. Now, the spirit of Tartarus is that little evil voice that tells your mom to cook an irresistibly delicious hearty stew in the middle of the freaking summer. Insert David Spade laugh here. Ha 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 ha. Lastly, we are told about a boy named Eros, alias Lil Limb Melter. He lives within the breast of human beings and gods, is known to overpower reason, and no one is more beautiful than he is. Eros is the driving force of baby making or creation in general. So in a way, what Hesiod is telling us is love makes the world go round. From this point forward, we won't hear much about him as a god, but rather as an invisible superpower that hits you like that Arizona desert heat. And anytime we're told that someone falls in love or does the nasty, just remember Eros made them do it. Imagine if the person you're in love with cheats and tells you Eros made them do it. I would be like, how about you gather all your stuff, saunter over to the nearest river, kick the biggest rock you see, and I hope your fat toe breaks. And when it heals, I hope you get an ingrown toenail. Alright, so here's the recap. In the beginning, there was nothing. Then came the foundation of all things, under which is found the source of evil, and love set the world in motion. First came Chasm, then came Gaia, Tartarus, and Eros. That concludes our study on the primordial gods, and hope to see you next time. Bounce, go wow wow.
What a sucker.